Welcome to the Cheeley Law Review. My name is Ben Burnett. My guest today is the man, the myth, the legend, Bob Cheeley. Bob, welcome to your own show.
Good to be here.
I want to talk to you. Give the people at home, Bob and I have been friends for several years. Bob and I met when I was on the city council in Alpharetta, and I knew him as a land developer who had spent tens of millions of dollars renovating, restoring a very dilapidated part of Alpharetta, which if you drove anywhere around here between 2005 and 2011, 12, 13, you get an immense amount of credit, or should, if no one knows that it was you, because Thompson Street and its revitalization in Alpharetta is now one of the most beautiful streets the city has. And it was anything but that before then, and you saw it. But this is not about that. I just said that to say this is how Bob and I know each other and have been friends ever since, supporter of all of the things that I have done. And so I'm very grateful to you. How did you grow up?
I was very blessed to grow up in a little town where I got little town values, a little town called Buford, Georgia. And
so were you in the Gwinnett part?
Yes. We're, proudly the reason that there's a lake. Buford Dam holds the water back. My mother and father married in 1952. My mother was a Medlock Bridge Road. Her family, longtime residents, dating back into the 1800s, of parts of North Fulton. And my father's family settled in Gwinnett County in the early 1800s. Deep roots on both sides of the family.
It was the Cheeleys and the Nashes and all those families you see on the other side. I know that a lot of the North Fulton names, but there's a lot of Gwinnett names too.
Yeah, there are. I could sit here and list numerous families that I've known for years and years. The Chadburns, Chadburn Ferry Road, they were early settlers in the Buford area in the 1870s. And the Allens, Bona Allen, founded, he was Buford's first millionaire. He founded a leather industry there in Buford, made saddles, world-class saddles. They were known all over the country and around the world for our Western saddles and English saddles. And they made boots for farmers. They made boots for soldiers for the war effort, World War I, World War II. And they employed about 2,500 people back during the Depression. My grandfather, my dad's father, his name was Albert Cheeley. He worked for the Allens, and he made saddles, and he carved, the detailed patterns into the saddles. And one of his most famous claims to fame was making the saddle for Roy Rogers.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Dale Evans. And they brought their horses here to Buford back in the 1930s to be fitted for saddles. And they brought them on rail cars from Oklahoma.
I grew up in Lilburn, which has not held its value quite like Buford has over time. And so Bob and I are both very big fans of municipality governance. Incredibly important. That's a whole separate topic for another day, but we're big fans. If you want to think about starting a city, we'll probably help you get there. Bob, you went to the University of Georgia. You were a Fiji. What'd you study in undergrad?
I studied political science. And, growing up, I thought I might want to be an architect, but I couldn't bring myself to go to Georgia Tech, having grown up going to the Georgia games. So I put that on the shelf, and I guess I'm a frustrated architect now these days.
You've been trying to atone for that, passing on that ever since, by being a property developer in various fashions?
It's in my blood. My dad did the same thing. My dad and mother, and I grew up, taking care of rental properties, cutting grass, painting, fixing things that a plumber or electrician weren't needed to do. Really wanted to roll up my sleeves and help my family and do my part. And that's where I learned the value of hard work. I've decided then and there, once I decided to go to law school, graduated from the University of Georgia in 79 and worked on an MBA for about a year because I finished undergraduate in 3 years. And then I went to law school, graduated in 82 and went back to Buford, Georgia to practice law with my dad and older brother.
Did your dad ever get mad at you because you didn't finish your MBA, or was he fine with it?
Oh, he was fine with it. I got enough business courses in that way to balance things.
When you go to work with your dad, what are the early draws on you as a lawyer? What did you find that you really like to pursue, and why?
Well, first and foremost, I just like helping people, the common people, the kind of people I grew up with and saw my grandfather, playing checkers with in Buford on Saturdays. After I got through cutting grass, I'd ride my bike into town and sit and watch the old timers in their overalls play checkers. And I just love people. When I went back to practice law in 1982 with my dad, first and foremost, I wanted to help people. My dad was serving as the county attorney for litigation cases for Gwinnett County at that time. And so I was, had experience there for 3 or 4 years working with the county, helping the county with all their legal problems. And, that's big government and representing a big company. But I didn't enjoy that nearly as much as I enjoyed helping people who had been genuinely harmed. So I gravitated to working on a bunch of cases that my dad had in the office that he didn't have time to really spend time on working himself. And those were a lot of cases where people had been horribly injured and or killed, had a loved one killed in motor vehicle accidents. And so one of the first product liability cases, the first product liability case that I ever handled it's a sad way to start it, but it was for my first cousin who was killed. Collision that he should have walked away from. He was driving a Nissan 280Z with T-tops, and he got run into while he was on a interstate or highway speeds outside of Opelika, between Opelika and Phoenix City, Alabama. So that was my first case against a big company. I just had a mission to go get justice for my cousin, Jeff.
As you kind of progress with your dad and your firm, you start growing up and doing things a little more on your own, taking the avenue. It's ever since I've known you, that's one of the things you kind of really seek out is to help people in all walks of life. You can read about Bob's cases in national publications and all kinds of things. And we will get there as this series goes on. As you get into your mid-30s, 40, you get to become an influential guy around the state of Georgia, both inside of law and from a policy conversation with elected officials. It's no secret you've got a wonderful relationship with Roy Barnes and a wonderful relationship with Casey Cagle. And those two guys sat in different parties, and you seem like a guy who's pragmatist-based but friends with everybody. How did you grow in influence in the industry and personally? Is it just the family connections in Buford and everybody had to come talk to the Cheeleys, or what was it?
Growing up, I was born in 1957, 2 years after the dam filled up Lake Lanier. And my mother worked there for the gentleman who, his name was Mr. Phillips. He was a colonel, I believe, and he ran Lake Lanier when it first opened for several years. And my mother worked for him, and I'd go over there and sit and play and hang around the office there at the dam.
They've got big catfish.
Yeah.
Huge
catfish. But
That's for free.
But my dad, got out of law school in 1952 at the University of Georgia. And during his time in college and law school, made money doing other things, pay his way through college and law school. And one of the things he did was he was the voice of the Georgia Bulldogs on Saturdays in Sanford Stadium, announcing the games while he was in law school for 3 years. And I've got pictures of him sitting up there in the press box. It's really cool.
That's super neat.
But, back in the 60s and 70s, Georgia was a very yellow dog Democrat state.
I think in a lot of ways it still is, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I do too. But at the
that's not popular to say, but it's not. It doesn't make me wrong.
Yeah, my dad, volunteered to help Jimmy Carter run for office and get elected. And my dad, before that, when he first got out of law school, he was selected to be a delegate to go to Washington to lobby Congress to get the funds to build Lake Lanier. And so I've got this book on Lake Lanier history, and his picture's in there, along with Mayor Hartsfield and others, making a trip to D.C. to get the $60 million that was needed to build the lake, buy all the land, and build the dam, which is a bargain.
Now, you could buy a house out there for like $1.2 million today.
Yeah, really.
Just one.
Right, yeah. So my mother was on the Buford City School Board when the schools, we had a white school and an African-American school in Buford, and white school was called Buford High School, and the other one was called Grenard Watson. The two schools integrated. I think I was in the 6th grade. My mother really, she was well known and loved in the city by blacks and whites. I credit her with being able to bring the two races together and go to school together, and I don't really remember any kind of problems or friction. Yeah, she loved people, and she served the people of Buford. She would take meals to the Kiwanis every Tuesday night and feed 60 men and make it in her kitchen, and I'd help along with my siblings, we'd put it in the station wagon and take it over there and serve them and clean up dishes after that.
And that was all you knew?
Yeah, and so I watched my mother and my father, too, serving their fellow man. When it came time for me to decide what I wanted to do, I just had a genetic imprint that I wanted to serve the little man. And that's what I've done for the last 41 years, practicing law.
When you look at some of the opportunities that you've had, one of the reoccurring themes that I have when I come in here and I talk to Gabrielle and Dre, Gabby, all of them, the thing that they always say is that they are so appreciative of how, one, you invest in them as people and also give them the creative freedom to carve out the niches that they are passionate about, because you will inevitably be good at those things. But they also talk about the concept of, as we've talked through, people selecting your firm, people becoming a part of your family, future attorneys, future clients. Doesn't matter how you treat people, always kind of transcends. You can hire a plaintiff's lawyer. You can hire one in an hour. But what makes you guys different from the big firms? Because I know you have the experience in both.
I'd say the thing that we try to do is a moment in time that we first meet a potential client is we listen. We don't brag on ourselves of what our track record is. We let the track record speak for itself. But at that first encounter, we want to sit down and we want to listen and understand everything that the client wants to say and the pain and the hurt that they're going through. A lot of times, it's a parent that's lost a child, and, I was hired in 3 out of the 5 wrongful death cases for the Georgia Southern nursing students back in 2015 who tragically lost their lives on I-16 early one morning. And one of those families had been to see another lawyer who was very good, but they didn't feel right about hiring that lawyer. And I asked them later, why'd you hire me? And they said, well, when we went to see the other lawyer, all he wanted to talk about was himself and how good he was. When we came to see you a few days later, you didn't say a word about yourself other than you love them. You told us you love us, and you'll do your very best to get justice for their daughter who lost her life. I just care, and I teach, the people that work here with me. I got a great team. I teach them to care about people from the heart. You can't hide that. Not only can you not fake it, but you can't hide it when it's sincere.
When you look, we've had lengthy conversations about what the message is that you want people to know. And it is easy to cast dispersions on an industry until you're the person who needs a lawyer for that purpose. And I think at some point it is every family over the course of a lifetime or two. I can't think of anyone who escapes that on some level. But what makes you guys, your caseload today, and I say this to all the credit to you, is between 40 and 50 active cases. And some of those may be 4 or 5 years from having a trial date. But when people come in here, you guys are not a huge firm, but you have a reputation that is incredibly profound in an industry and in a state like Georgia. And you do work in other places, but I'll keep it here for right now. What is the value that you have seen? Because you could take it to any size you wanted to, and you haven't. Talk about why you are selective with who you work with.
I think the reason that I'm selective is I really want to invest in people's lives, that work with me, younger attorneys and paralegals, and I want to impart to them the things that I've learned over my lifetime that I think that give me a skill set to make a difference in the legal arena. I can't do that if I've got, 24 or more employees. I don't have time to invest in their lives the way I enjoy doing. And so I'd rather just focus on a select few cases at a time and give it our 110% best, leave nothing on the table, try to achieve the value that we can for each client, no matter how big or the case may be. That just gives me a lot of gratification when we wrap up a case that's been pending for quite a while, and a lot of times we have to go to trial to get justice, get the value.
One of the things about your firm, everybody that I talk to in here, you mention a courtroom, they light up. And I know that in the industry, it is a commonplace thing to see what you can settle away from a courtroom. And I know that there are a variety of reasons for that. But when I talk to your team about the courtroom, they look like athletes who are about to get to go play. Talk about what that courtroom means to you and why you embrace it instead of fear it like so many people do.
I think I trace it back to my upbringing in Buford and playing high school football, and Buford had great teams back then too, just the way they do now. They have a lot more success now than we did back in the day. But I just remember even before I got into high school, I took up for kids that got bullied, even to the point of putting myself between the bully and the kid that was being tormented, and a few times got into fights, standing up for the little guy. I think that's where it comes from. I just really desire to equal, level the playing field for people. A lot of these cases that we represent, they've lost a loved one or somebody's paralyzed, their lives are forever altered. A lot of times we find out that the wrongdoer, whether it's a big company or what, or government even, they cut corners purposefully to save money. And or they were doing things that violated the law, such as looking at their cell phone. In the case of the Georgia Southern deaths, those 5 young ladies and two who survived. The truck driver should never have been hired because he violated the company's hiring policy because of his prior driving record. So a lot of lawyers, 98% of them, I'd say, are settlement lawyers. They're not trial lawyers. They just want to get the case in and then see how quickly they can get it settled.
In the industry, you guys are not of a enormous scale. You work on the biggest cases that can possibly exist, but you keep a very lean team, and you are selective about who you take and why you take them. Every case is special to you, and you are prepared to go to trial on their behalf. Every single one that walks in. I know that is a prerequisite. It's like, if we have to fight this out in the courtroom, we feel good about this, and we're willing to do all the work to get there. Talk about what you look for in clients when they're evaluating the process. Like, what are the things that are really important to you guys on a firm at the other end? Because you don't take everybody. And I think that that's an important message to put out there, because the exclusivity and the time that you will invest, like if you're a Bob Cheeley case, you ought to feel really good about that as a client.
Yeah, you've got to be selective in this business. You can't take every case that calls on you. But you do have to allocate your time and resources to the ones that we feel like have a strong set of facts on liability, strong set of facts on damages, and that liability was the cause of the damages. That's not to say that we don't take some cases, make an exception to that general rule. But we do take every case, the ones that we do select. The client is told on the front end, we're going to prepare this case because we're going to take it to trial if it's necessary to take it to trial. So we take every case and prepare it as if it's going to go to trial. And the reason...
Does that scare people on the other end?
Yeah, it does. So the reputation of the lawyer handling the case for the plaintiff is well known in the insurance industry and among the defense bar who defend insurance companies and big companies like the automakers. They know whether or not the lawyer on the other side has a track record of taking cases to trial. And so to me, I really love going to trial because it's like getting out there on the high school football field. I was a former offensive lineman, left tackle. No, I used to just enjoy driving my defenders down the field and opening holes for the tailbacks, fullbacks to run through. And I feel like that's what I do now as a trial lawyer. I try to pancake block my opponents.
When you look, if you had one single thing that you wanted people to know about this firm, what would it be? And we'll close here.
I would say if we're so fortunate to come to an agreement with somebody to serve them as a client, they're going to feel like we are part of their family and we're going to battle for them. And there's not going to be any doubt once they see how we handle the case in court or leading up to the trial. There'll be no doubt in their mind that we didn't leave it all on the field.
This has been the first installment of the Cheeley Law Review. We'll see you guys next week.